and Governor Walz just picks another one that's just like them until they can cycle the other person through again. And we need to put an end to that, because, you know, if you look at what happened at the truck stop in St. Paul with that shooting that occurred over October of last year, where 14 people were shot, that judge was appointed in 2020 by Tim Walz, who also happened to be the same judge that ruled on removal of absentee ballot signature verification requirements in the 2020 election, was also the same judge that let that shooter out of prison early who shot 14 people. But yet we're not screaming about the judge that did it. And we need to start finding out who our judges and our prosecutors are. And the governor needs to use their office effectively, because the law is supposed to be applied equally, and it's not being applied equally right now. Our justice system there is no justice really at the end of the day, unless you're going against their narrative. But we have to start from scratch, TC. We really do. And we have to get people elected in the Attorney General's office that are going to do that. That position is extremely important when it comes to the rule of law in Minnesota, because not only do you have the Attorney General, but the Attorney General hires out their entire office of lawyers to assist them. And right now, that entire office that Keith Ellison is running is corrupt, and it stinks to high heaven. And you've seen that in the news, because there's a lot of pay for play going on in the Attorney General's office.
Well, Dennis Smith provided two names. I don't know if you saw the video, but Dennis Smith provided two names to me. Took me a while to remember I was going to have him do that, but we got those names out there. Two people in the Attorney General's office that are funded and paid for by Bloomberg.
Yeah.
That boldly.
I thought it was Soros.
Well, we thought it was, and then Dennis corrected that. So it's
Bloomberg.
It's Bloomberg.
Yeah.
And we put those names
Jensen
out.
Supporting gun bills funded and bought and paid for by Michael Bloomberg too. It's not
correct.
That.
We are going for liftoff in T-30. Stand by for further instructions, Minnesota Black Robe Regiment.
That's kind of where I want to go now, and I'm gonna a little self-promotion here. As you're aware, I have shared video of Scott Jensen being incredibly rude and condescending to two ladies at a medical freedom protest.
Yeah, I saw that. That was terrible. Did you else? He does that on the debate stage to people too who question him. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just. I knew I was going to get a reaction from you. So, but one of the pieces of pushback that I've gotten from that video actually came from somebody, because I shared it on your Facebook group. And one of the pieces of pushback that I received was, we have to stop tearing each other down. We have to really work to build each other up. And my response to that was, wait a minute, nobody has any issues with lauding Scott Jensen for getting down and chasing their kids around the restaurant and playing with them. And I don't mean to imply anything derogatory with that. What I'm saying is, everybody's all on board with showing how he's such a man of the people when he's playing with their kids and meeting and greeting and spending time talking to people in a booth. But for some reason, we can't talk about how he treats people when they disagree with him. And I know that's firsthand. Yeah, and I know that's been a big issue for you with Scott. And I have no problem telling people I'm very disgusted by his behavior, not just with the sure, he's taken some really good stands on medical freedom. Nobody's going to argue that.
Absolutely. I'm not going to. What he did for COVID in Minnesota, I thank him for that. But beyond that, he's an opportunist.
And he does not treat people well when they don't agree with him. And that is what I don't understand is, am I missing something, or am I seeing something that you've seen, and what does that say about what kind of governor he would be in your mind? Because I want you to set this up about what makes you the right candidate over him, because we know this is coming down to a primary runoff.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's saying they're going to abide by the endorsement. And of course, now there's a bunch of Scott Jensen sycophants out there spreading rumors to delegates about me that I'm not going to abide by the endorsement process, which is blatantly false. At the time, I made those statements, I wasn't going to, because the party was in complete shambles.
You're
Literally,
thinking back to the Carnahan leadership and whatnot.
yeah. I mean, it was beyond that. I mean, it stems well beyond any of that. I mean, the GOP's. I mean, we're getting better, and I think we're on track now. But I mean, it's going to take a few election cycles for this organization to really get rid of the past. But there are things that I heard, in past processes under previous chairs, about how the convention process, works. And I have had no trust in it at this time. But under our new chair, I've had lunch with him and some meetings with David, and I feel that he's out to run a fair, open, truthful, and honest nomination process in May. So I changed my position, and it's never been a hell yes, I'm running to the primary. It's been I may or may not run to the primary answer.
Okay.
And that's even the position I took last July at the Republican Party retreat up in Brainerd. One of the questions was asked to us candidates at the time, will you abide by the endorsement process? And I said, maybe. And let me tell you why. And, I could see the room split apart like that a little bit. But here at the end of the day, running to the primary, which Dennis is doing now, which I think is a really bold move of his part to go straight to the primary. That makes a good statement for his campaign that he's doing that. But running from May to August and then getting nominated in August as the primary winner doesn't give you much time until the general election in November.
Right.
So if this is something that not even myself, but I'm hypothetically playing out a scenario that any candidate were to do after May, decide to go to the primary, and if they win, go on the ballot in November, they're going to have to build out their entire campaign army from May to August and pray to God that they win in August to beat Tim Walz in November, because early voting in Minnesota, remember, starts 47 days before the election, which is nonsense, which is a different topic we can discuss if you'd like. But that's not a whole lot of time to put together a campaign organizational structure to defeat the incumbent Democrat, Tim Walz. So you're going to have a lot of money to go to that primary, because you're going to have paid staff. You're going to have to build out your entire campaign during those summer months in hopes that you win the primary in August, so you can keep the momentum going through to November, because there just is no way to do it in August. There is no way to build that team structure in August in that short amount of time.
So you have between now and May to get that endorsement. Mm-hmm. And the thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to set yourself apart from Jensen. And I think you've already been able to do that with the people who have had a chance to meet you. But that's why I brought up his treatment of people.
Yeah.
I've watched you engage with people who, like, I don't know who you are, I'm voting for Jensen because he's done this. And you haven't gotten insulting about it. You haven't been dismissive. You're very, forthright and said, look, I have a lot of misgivings about Jensen, and here's why. When it comes down, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I've never taken a situation like that from, a potential delegate or a voter say, well, why are you better than Scott, or even the other candidates out there. I have never used that opportunity to put them down. I've just pointed out facts, and I'm sure some people have done the same to me. Sometimes occasionally I get, well, you're just an outsider, and you're a small town mayor, and you're young, and blah blah blah, and it's just, you get that. I'm like, well, the Constitution just says that you have to be a citizen in 25, and those are the only requirements to run for governor in Minnesota, per the Minnesota Constitution. So the rest of your points that you're making are null and void. It's about who's going to do the right stuff for the people and who's not in it for themselves. I feel I'm the only candidate that is not in it for themselves. I'm the only one that has stated that I will donate my entire salary as governor back to the people or to organizations where it needs to go to be effective. I'm not doing it for the fame. I'm not doing it for the clout. I'm not doing it for the name ID, because I could care less about any of that. It's just, we have a country to save and a state to save. And the more states that we flip and save, the easier it is going to be to take America back as a whole, because it's never going to happen in Washington, D.C. As much
Thank you.
as
Yep.
the people who are out fundraising hundreds of millions of dollars for the Republican Party to flip the House and the Senate, it will never be saved in Washington, D.C., no matter how hard you try. It will never happen. So stop donating to all of those people as a political fundraising grift. If you want to support people that are actually going to make change, donate to your local candidates, because that's where the money is really needed here at the city council level, the state and Senate, or the representative and Senate level, the governor, attorney general, secretary of state, your school board. That's where the money is really needed. It's not needed to the people in Washington, D.C. They have plenty of it. They really do.
They make a lot more money just sitting in those offices than any of us dream of.
As much as I support our senators and our members of the U.S. Congress, they have enough money in their pockets now. It's time that we start supporting the local people, because that's where all the power and change happens. But to get back to your question, you're correct. I've never put anybody down, and I still won't put anybody down, because that is not the type of person that I am. Like I said, Scott Jensen's been phenomenal on COVID. He's done a good job. I'm still waiting for evidence that his medical license has been under attack, because, holding up an envelope like this doesn't, prove to me maybe he can't show the paperwork or not. But, he's taken a bold position, and I'm thankful for that. But he also could have done more. He could have moved forward motions to fire Jan Malcolm, which he doesn't. And now he runs around and blames Senator Benson and, Senator Gazelka for that.
Which they do own some of that.
They do, but I mean, he didn't put anything forward in the Senate to do that. He was also, I believe, to my knowledge, one of the individuals who kept the vote from going to the Senate floor. I know North Star Liberty Alliance covered it, and I don't want to say it wrong, but he held back the vote to go to the floor to strip Governor Walz of his emergency powers in May 2020. I have to double check that, and I apologize if I'm wrong, but I talk to anybody, even those who hate my guts. I really don't care. I mean, I pick up my campaign phone, and after CNN and MSNBC went on a 2-week tirade of attacking me in December, I was getting a lot of phone calls from people across the country who wanted to scream at me about voter fraud, and then I'm a QAnon Trumpist pig, blah blah blah, and all these expletives. I still talk to them on the phone. Didn't bother me whatsoever.
You're not a. I mean, you are a former pig, but I mean that's not But
I'm a big guy, but
yeah, not that kind of pig. You, as governor, would have a lot of clout, and you said you're not clout chasing, so that's not what I mean.
Mm-mm.
But you, as governor, would have a lot of clout when it comes to addressing a lot of the voter fraud, and you brought that topic up a little bit, and I think that's really a lot of people's minds are on that topic, on that issue right now, and I think rightly so. And you even brought up, look, in Washington D.C. is not where we fix things, and I keep trying to tell people, look, we do need to fix voter fraud, but trying to go back and change the election from 2020 and talk about reinstalling Trump. I get so sick of everybody. Oh, Trump's coming back to office next week or next month, and here we are, almost 2 years into it. What do we do instead of focusing on what happened in 2020? What would you as governor do to ensure that can't happen again in Minnesota? Because let's just be honest. We caught members of Ilhan Omar's election team harvesting ballots. We've got video of it, and it just got ignored. What do we do to fight that?
We're going to have to change our election system and laws in Minnesota when it comes to holding the candidates in campaigns responsible for any sort of malfeasance that takes place. So the reason why Ilhan Omar couldn't be held accountable, because under state law in Minnesota, you have to catch the candidate in action breaking the law, and not the campaign or any of its subsequent campaign staffers. So in her situation, it would only be the campaign staffer would be held accountable, even if Ilhan Omar herself told that campaign staffer to go do what they did. So for one, that needs to change. Two, we do not have a forensic audit process in Minnesota to actually look at an election at a forensic level. We need to get something like that on the books. We have to have the House and Senate. They need to make a bill that is, I'm going to use the word equitable and fair and whatever else, right? That is completely black and white and equal to both sides to audit our elections. We've seen multiple states take that stance and create those laws, but also clean up the voter rolls. I think it's Florida, correct me if I'm wrong, changed the way that they clean their voter roll ballots. It used to be monthly where they cleaned them up, and now they've gone to a weekly process because so many people are coming into the state, or people are passing away, that they're actually going through on a weekly basis and they're purging and cleaning up their voter rolls. I mean, this data is very important, and if we don't have any integrity to the data, it means nothing. I was in Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago where they held an election integrity event. Laura Logan from Fox News was the moderator there. They had Dave, I think it's Dave Ramuth or Rasmuth. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that name, who's a member of the Wisconsin Assembly over there, who put the bill forward to recall the electors for election fraud issues that took place in Wisconsin. I actually just heard he's running for governor now, but they presented the evidence with a lot of data experts, former military members who are cybersecurity experts, and actually broke down and showed where the switches in the vote counts happened. And then they actually showed some of the voter records that they were to get, that they received by subpoena power, where some of the speakers that were up on that stage actually voted more than once, and their birth dates took place in 1918. And there were thousands of people that voted that were born in 1918. Do the math on that.
Yeah, right.
You'd literally be the oldest person. There would be thousands of people.
That's a lot of old Wisconsins.
Yeah, I mean, I think the oldest person alive is 115 years old right now. I mean, you don't get that many humans that live that long. And
you just haven't seen that many people that are dead vote outside of Chicago.
Exactly. So we've known for a very long time that there is questions that have been taking place in our election systems. We're not updating our technology. Our software is outdated. They found wireless cards in some of these motherboards. Our equipment is being manufactured in China. It's just none of it. If you want to have security and you want to have people to have trust in our elections, there's no reason why we can't be making this equipment and the software under, American companies that are under the scrutiny of nonpartisan panels, if you will, are equally represented on each side from every major political party, monitoring the process of this equipment and the software being made. There's no reason why there should be no question as to why we should be questioning, are you eligible to vote? Right now in Minnesota, you just show up with a utility bill or have somebody vet for you, and you get to vote that day with a provisional ballot. But the problem is that provisional ballot is counted on election day, and then they verify who you are later.
Right.
Well, your vote's already in the system at that point. It should be complete opposite. It should be like a special colored ballot. And then after they verify your identity and who you are, then the ballot gets counted after the fact. And then we saw other states, had these giant mail bins on every street corner where people could just go dump their ballots into. We had evidence of people across the country receiving multiple mail-in ballots to their address, or we had people showing up to vote on voter day and saying, well, you've already voted, you can't vote again. And they're like, no, I haven't. There's just too many questionable things that have taken place. And if there is no fraud in our election systems, why is the left so afraid to allow the proof to come out? Why don't they prove it? Why can't we have a fair and balanced investigation into it? I mean, how hard is that to ask? How is that unreasonable to justify? Especially with voter ID, you need it for everything. You need your driver's license or your passport or any ID card to do pretty much anything in society except for vote.
Last week, you couldn't even go eat it in a restaurant
I know.
in the Twin Cities between Minneapolis and St. Paul. You couldn't eat in a restaurant without proof of your jab status.
Yep.
But those same jurisdictions, you could just show up and vote and say you were from down the street, and okay, we'll just take your word for it. I want to bring something up as it relates to that. And this is kind of a twofold question. Rumor has it you've received the endorsement of the Hmong community in the state of Minnesota.
I have. Yeah, I'm the only Republican in history of our country and our state to receive an endorsement from the Hmong American Leadership Council.
People are like, okay. I don't think they understand how big of a deal that is ultimately in the state of Minnesota. We have a massive population of the Hmong community here.
So let me break this down, how everything came apart and a little bit about the Hmong community in Minnesota. So what I've learned over the last, and I've known this, but not to the extent that I do. I really wish some of this was actually taught in our history books, because the stories and the what I've learned from this is, I believe you could make a movie and based off of the heroics of the Hmong that they did for America during the Vietnam War. So General Vang Pao was a general in the Laotian army who was recruited by the CIA to run a secret army for the Americans, basically to help us fight the war in Vietnam. So they would pull pilots out of crashed planes. They would fight against the Vietnamese. They would do all sorts of stuff. I mean, I think it was 30% of their population perished in Vietnam under secrecy, under the CIA, General Vang Pao, and they were persecuted for it, and they were on the run. But at the end of the day, Hmong people are patriots. They love this country. They love America. They hate communism. They stand for freedom, because that's literally what they lived through their entire life. So the equivalency of what their culture went through isn't like it happened 100 years ago or 500 years ago. I mean, you're talking about the 70s, and you're talking about the time frame in current history would be as equivalent as you waking up and watching the Super Bowl last night. That's how recent it was. And they were brought to America as part of their repayment, as part of them running in fleeing in Thailand and everything else, and hiding under persecution, were brought as refugees to America. Minnesota has the largest population of Hmong in the United States. I believe it's about 160,000 Hmong Americans now live here, and a lot of them are on to second and third generations with their family. But what has happened is they're welcomed by open arms by the Democrats. Obviously, there are 18 families, 18 family names in total in the Hmong culture. Not 19, not 17. It's always been 18 throughout their history, and they elect representatives from each of their family members to represent their entire family. So, you have the Zhang, you have the Lows. You have 18 different family names, which I'm sure people are familiar with a lot of those last name, the Paos, the Vangs, all of that. And the 18 council represents those families at the state and then at the national level as well, too. So I've been going to their events and getting to learn their culture. And Shia Low, if you remember who Shia Low is, he ran for Congress against Betty McCollum and CD4, but he didn't win the nomination, unfortunately. But actually, he just came on board on my campaign. He's officially a member of my campaign now as a staffer. Shia is. We're still working out his position, but he's going to be up in the upper ranks of the campaign. But I went out and I went to these events, and I got to know the people and the community and everything. And they're terrified of what Tim Walz has done to Minnesota.
Because they've lived through it.
They've lived through what's happening. Their businesses were burnt down. They were shut down during the COVID pandemic. They're terrified of the COVID vaccine. When the government says, get this shot, that's the last thing that they want to hear. But
because they're even the ones that are second and third generation here, are living off the experience, rightly so, of what their forefathers, their ancestors experienced
Yep.
at the hands of Marxist Vietnamese rulers, which is why they
Exactly.
fought so hard. Which is
For freedom.
what makes their endorsement of you so stellar, is that you've walked in and completely, in one fell swoop, completely decimated a leftist hold on a traditionally conservative community.
Exactly. And what's happened is the Democrats have bought and paid off some of these family leaders, and then these family leaders have a lot of clout and pull within their communities to tell their people who they should support. And that's
Yep.
what's been happening. And that's what the Democrats do forever. I mean, they do the same thing in Minneapolis with some of the community leaders in North Minneapolis. You know, they pull in and write out a check for something and then so on. And then the perpetual reelection of Jacob Fry and Tim Walz continues because of that.
And the Republicans have done a horrible job of getting into these communities because they feel like it's not worth their time. I'm never going to break in. I can't do it, so I'm not going to bother. And then it makes it easier for them to be painted as, you know, racist or hateful or disconnected. And these people are begging, especially the Hmong community, are begging for a guy like you to come in and show them that you actually give a damn.
No, it's more than that. It's the Vietnamese community. We have the community of refugees from Burma, which are known as the Karen. There's thousands of them here that have fled the persecution and literally the genocide and military takeover of their country there as well. Those are the new version of the Hmong immigrants. I mean, you're talking in the last few years that they have come here, but they all are freedom-loving individuals that just want to live their life of freedom in the American dream. But
nobody's reaching out to them.
I showed up, and I go everywhere. I'll go wherever. And I realized that's why I started this campaign a year now. I'm the longest one running. It's the longest job interview of my life, not lying. And it's been an honor to do this, and I'm humbled by my experiences that I've had along the way. And here's the story about Tim Walz, how bad he is. So in December, we were at an event in Maplewood where he was invited to come speak and be a part of their transition process for one of their it's called the Hmong 18 Council. So you have the American Leadership Council, and then you have their Hmong 18 Council. So they're two different organizations. The 18 Council is their nonpartisan organization that represents their communities, such as becoming American citizens and healthcare and you know, their nonprofit portion of their community. Tim Walz was invited to speak to, you know, give thanks and welcome their new president to the leadership role that's elected every 2 years ago. He shows up 45 minutes late, runs in, sits down at his table that was literally next to my table. 10 feet from Tim Walz is where I was sitting because they invited me to their event. No other candidate, by the way, I should mention, was invited but me to their event. And Tim Walz shows up 45 minutes late. They prepare a plate of food for him. He doesn't eat it. He runs on stage to speak, gives his speech with his little binder, takes some plaque that they gave him, and runs out the door. Meanwhile, leaving the plate of food behind,
that's an insult.
That's a huge insult. I mean, that's a giant no-no. It was such an insult that even the MC of the event, as Tim Walz was kind of making his way out the door, taking some pictures, the MC made it apparent multiple times on the microphone to say, "Governor, you forgot to eat your food. Governor, you left your food behind," several times. And Tim Walz didn't care, and he walked right out the door and went away to his next event or whatever.
But that's really emblematic of the political class in the state of Minnesota. And let's just be honest, not just the DFL, but the Republican Party as a whole.
Yep. So then 2 weeks after that event, I was invited to their American Leadership Council, where they're doing their award ceremony and their transition of, you know, new elected officials within their families to represent the American Leadership Council. And they had me speak, and I don't know what I did, what I said, but it was enough to move Sisuk Vang, who gave me the endorsement of the Hmong community. And he is actually the son of General Vang Pao. General Vang Pao died in 2011, but Sisuk now represents his father and his family. At that level, he's not the current elected leader, but he still has a lot of clout and a lot of pull because of his father and who he represents. He decided that I'm the guy. And,
he's an elder head.
He's the elder head. Yep.
Yeah. He's just, I cannot emphasize enough. This may sound like just boring stuff to some people, but
it's big, because you're talking about 70,000 voters.
This is huge, but it's not just the voters. It's huge in a cultural respect in Minnesota, that because the conservative base, to our shame, have walked away and dismissed so many minority communities, not because there's some sort of intrinsic hatred in us for minority communities, because that's not it. It's because we've been told we can never capture that base.
Yep.
And these bases, like you said, are oftentimes coming. You look at the expat Chinese community in the United States, like Epic Times and NTD, that they have a network of very traditional, very republic-minded peoples who want people who are going to fight against the leftist surge in the United States, but nobody pays attention to them because, we can't capture their vote, so we're just not going to pay attention. And that's what I wish people would see and understand, is like you've done something, not just because you are Mike Murphy, but you've done something, you've invested in them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's missing in the Republican Party, like I said, and in the DFL. There's no investment. One side throws money at them and the other side just ignores. But you've invested, and that can mean a massive swing in the state of Minnesota.
It is, and it's true. And that's the problem with candidates and people who are elected to office, is they stop caring because it's personal motivations. If you look, I'm going to use Paul Gazelka for an example.
Please do.
He feels like he is anointed to be the next governor because he put his time in, and he's the Senate majority leader who fought off the moderates and brought people from the Iron Range in who were historically Democrats and blah, 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 blah. But here's the thing with him. He's a pandering buffoon. And let me tell you why, because on the debate stage, which we've had 20 of these debates now, so I'm glad to share the videos with you if you don't believe what I'm saying. Here's what he has done. If you look at his announcement video, he did it at the state capitol, for one, his formal announcement, which I thought was really, really dumb in the first place, and just shows you how big of an ego he has. But he had a bunch of individuals, as you would say, and I hate using this word, but from the minority community there. And he runs around in the debate stage and he says, well, I've met with the black church leaders, and I've met with the Vietnamese, and I've met with the Hmong, and I've met with the Somali. And he just goes on this, like, I've met with them, look what I've done rampage, but he hasn't done anything for them. Where was he when he was the majority leader of the Senate, where he was actually there advocating for their communities? He wasn't doing that at all. He's using this as a campaign thing. And that's the problem with these individuals that are running for office that I'm up against, is that they're using the other cultures to try to bolster their campaign and make them look better than they are. And at the end of the day, I'm actually out doing stuff because I care. And when I'm in office, I want to make sure everybody has a voice and that everybody is represented equally. And that's the way that it should be done. And, Tim Walz is never appointed a Hmong American to any sort of senior leadership level within his organization and his administration. He doesn't even have one Hmong commissioner sitting on his cabinet whatsoever. I mean, that just goes to show you that the Democrats use these people, and it makes me sick, and it absolutely drives me nuts that they do that. And I'm sick and tired of politicians doing the same thing just to make their campaigns look better than they are. And I think Scott Jensen tried to do that. Then he met with John Thompson, which was just a bad move. Sorry, I had to throw that one out there. But
Well, no,
it tires me. It tires me that we're
Yeah.
taking advantage of each other. It really does.
Well, and for your olive branch to be put out to a man who has no desire to have peace, period. You know, that was the big thing for me that just really, you know, lack of better terminology, really kind of chaffed my hide. Was you're reaching out to a guy who literally wants to burn down the city of Hugo.
Yeah, I know.
That's who you're going to pander to.
Minnesota Black Robe Regiment, you are over the target. You are authorized